So after spending a week investigating what was going on, because there was all the labelling of protesters and freedom fighters as linked in loosely with these killers, I could just as easily link them in with all left-wing groups, left-wing extreme groups, hardcore communists, socialists, and even media, if I was that way inclined. The Queensland tragedy. This video is going to focus on the videos that were released by Gareth Daniel Train and his partner Stacey Train. This makes up the bulk of my video. Gareth Train's videos were posted under a pseudonym and were therefore missed by all media, it seems. The videos made by Gareth and Stacey Train does beg the question, were these videos some kind of manifesto or justification of their actions? It will start with an introduction about small snippets of their known lives and related events before the killings took place. There are lots of unknowns and limitations on research, which also include my time restrictions and financial limitations. This video is not meant to be conclusive in any way. This video does not focus on the actual shootings and the killings that took place in Queensland on the Whyabilla property. I've also gone into various tangents along the way, in an effort to understand various things and provide some historical elements, broader understanding, related insights, reflections, opinions, and some educational tidbits, in an effort to perhaps provide a better understanding overall. The point of this video was just to investigate whether the media reports, labelling of groups, and comments made by spokespersons had any depth. I don't think so, but you make up your own mind about that. In fact, the ties that certain media make to certain groups are so weak you could even paint Gareth as having much more in common with the far left and the Green senators than with any freedom fighters or anyone on the right. This video doesn't paint the killers in any positive light at all, and I'm not including any snippets of their videos. So let's begin. A very tragic event happened on December 12, 2022 on a property in Whyabilla, which is in the Western Downs region of Queensland. 2 young police officers were killed on a rural property. 2 other young police officers barely escaped. 1 man from a neighbouring property was killed. 2 people later that day posted a short video on YouTube and took responsibility for the killings in a calm and considered manner. Those same 2 people and a 3rd person would then be killed by tactical police in a shootout on the property. The Queensland shootings are in every way tragic for the now deceased police officers, their families and friends and communities involved. So firstly, let's go back in time a bit to look at the 3 shooters. The Train family unit and what little we know. Brothers Gareth Daniel Train and Nathaniel Train grow up with a dad, Ronald Train, who is self-described as free evangelical, who created his own church based on literal readings of scripture. When the brothers were 23 and 24 years old, the family unit completely broke down. After the shootings, the father stated that he had not seen his sons for roughly 23 years. Stacey and Nathaniel married young and had 2 children. Both Stacey and Nathaniel worked in the education sector for quite some time as teachers and later as principals. Stacey and Nathaniel divorced roughly 7 years ago, and Stacey then began a relationship with Nathaniel's brother, Gareth Daniel Train. Gareth purchased the Whyabilla property in Goondiwindi several years ago. Nathaniel Train seems to have been involved in bringing light to a NAPLAN cheating issue at his new school in Walgett, New South Wales, where he was the principal. For anyone who doesn't know NAPLAN, it's a standardised literacy and numeracy national testing program that is now completely digital and helps provide an insight into educational standards for a number of reasons. It seems that Nathaniel brought this cheating issue to the New South Wales Department of Education and was very frustrated with inaction over the alleged exam cheating at his new school in Walgett. The cheaters were allegedly teacher aides. He would soon have a heart attack at his desk. It appears that complaints were made about Nathaniel, Gareth and Stacey to the Departments of Educations at their respective schools about some other unknown matters, including complaints about bizarre and inappropriate behaviour, according to ABC's coverage. The department said Nathaniel, Stacey and Gareth, who seemed to be employed as more of a groundskeeper in his school, resigned and were not subject to any disciplinary hearings. Nathaniel was perhaps in severe stress, being ostracised by the alleged cheating teacher aides perhaps, and had a heart attack and subsequently resigned from his position as principal of Walgett Primary School in August 2021. He then went to a property in New South Wales where he lived and is said to have remained in contact with friends and family until October 2022, when a missing persons report was made. Police then began investigating the missing persons report in October. Why were people so concerned about Nathaniel to report him missing? Perhaps the communications prior to him being reported as missing had become rather concerning. We don't know. At some unknown date, he has arrived at the Williambilla property to be involved in the shootings. Queensland Police initially told the media that police had turned up to the Williambilla property for the missing persons report regarding Nathaniel Train. But then weeks later, in December 2022, held a press conference stating that police had indeed turned up to the property because of an outstanding warrant. This is a bit of a red flag. However, the outstanding warrant was due to an incident at the New South Wales-Queensland border on December 17, 2021. Gareth is alleged to have rammed and then cut through a locked gate with an angle grinder on the Benanga River that crosses the McIntyre River. The bridge seems to have been locked for two reasons: one, to stop interstate travel due to border closures at the time, and because the area was in flood. The four-wheel drive Land Cruiser was immediately stuck in floodwaters. A passerby assisted, and the four-wheel drive was eventually towed to the nearby town of Talwood. He was seen with an army backpack and two large rifles and a hunting knife. A witness made an in-depth interview report with local New South Wales police. Once the flood waters had receded, guns were found near the bridge and are said to have been registered to Gareth. It seems that the dumping of the guns was the issue, or the breaking of the gate, or the, at the time, illegal crossing of a border, or carrying guns outside of their licensed zone. I'm not sure about this, but it resulted in issuing a warrant. Despite Queensland Police communicating to media that police had turned up to the property on December 12th for a missing persons report, a Queensland Police spokesperson would later in December tell media and the public that Queensland Police had attempted to access people on the property several times over the previous few months in regards to the outstanding warrant and not the missing persons report, but had not been able to speak to anyone on the property. So even though media, and likely due to a police media team, said that police were attending Gareth Daniel Train's property over the missing persons report regarding Nathaniel Train, we can conclude that New South Wales Police had communicated the outstanding warrant to Queensland Police, and a statement confirms New South Wales Police asked Queensland Police to attend the property on December 12th for the outstanding warrant. This original reasoning of missing persons, which had 4 young recruits attending a property which led to the deaths of 2 officers, may have been to cover backs within the police force and possible incompetence of seniors who gave the orders that ended up with rookie police facing down gunfire which ended their lives. In late 2021, Stacey Jane Train, Jane is her middle name, resigned from Tara Shire State College, allegedly due to the mandates of teachers having to receive a mRNA injection. It has also been alleged and claimed by ABC that parents made complaints about Stacey to the Department of Education for bizarre and inappropriate behaviour. But it doesn't appear that Stacey made her stance on the mandates and the mRNA issue very public within the school. There are perhaps clues to Stacey's bizarre and inappropriate behaviour in the videos uploaded to her YouTube channel. They shot and killed police on December 12th, and on this same day, multiple videos were uploaded, perhaps in a way to provide a reasoning for what they had done or were about to do. There are also earlier videos posted in November, the previous month, when the channel started. Perhaps unknown to many, Gareth Daniel Train also had a video channel, although on Rumble and not YouTube. Although these were posted under a different name using his middle name Daniel and indigenous name Yukikigarawa. This channel had also only started in November 2022. Both video channels shared some videos and both channels had unique videos. Like certain true crime shows, the actual facts of the shootings on the property may never be known and the reasoning of the killers may never be known because they are now dead. Following the shootings, we have some mainstream media creating an agenda. It seems some mainstream looked at only a couple of the videos and then excluded the rest, either because of time constraints, lack of research, bias, or possibly an agenda. Perhaps before people do such terrible things, they pretty much say why, or they are alive afterwards to say why. And in this scenario, that may never really happen because the killers were killed. We can perhaps draw some clues from these small number of uploads the killers made. Let's first try to gain a bigger picture of Gareth Train by looking at his Rumble videos. Now I might point out here that two of the killers, the brothers, are Aboriginal men, or perhaps more accurately of Aboriginal heritage. This is something that mainstream media left out and no one has really covered. But this explains the use of some Aboriginal words in the titles and throughout the videos. The creator's voice in the videos has been disguised, but the inflections, words that receive emphasis and phrase tonality in the voice clearly show the creator is Gareth Daniel Yukikigarawa Train. So video 1. The first video is uploaded on November 4th, 2022 entitled True Fella. The same video was uploaded on November 10th to Stacey's YouTube channel. The video is Gareth's disguised voice over a series of about 50 images and video snippets. There are a series of text overlays over the images. All the text overlays spread throughout the video provides this. Commenced planning in 1783. Generational trauma-based program. Spiritual war manifested in the physical, implemented by church and state to enslave the mind. Abuse stops when physical, psychological abuse is ended. Take up your swords and spear. Choose to end it. The 50 images and snippets is a mix of the following. English government insignia, Freemasonry symbols, a Medusa-type head over an old map of Australia, English military and prisoners, pictures of arrested Aboriginal people, Aboriginal women and children. The children are of mixed heritage, standing in front of shanty huts or on utes, in schools, with nuns and priests. One photo is of Maori school children with two priests. There are various images of neatly dressed white children in school. All video snippets are in black and white. There's photos of Aboriginal children sitting at desks learning to write, straight into Aboriginal men all tied up with neck braces and metal chains. There's a picture of a chart of some kind of abuse cycle and a man and boy standing at the gates of a boys' home. The final image is of a map of Australia with all the different tribes mapped out and some kind of statue as an overlay with text overlay, choose to end it. The voiceover at the beginning of the video is as follows. The program Satanic Ritual Abuse, MK Ultra, the Illuminati, Babylon to Egypt to America, compliance, compliance, compliance to turn you into a soulless, spiritless, demonic meat suit. The war against the children is the war against the creator. After this little monologue, the video's song starts at image 9 and is the popular song White Fella, Black Fella with the lyric Stand Up and Be Counted. The video is a little vague and it's a mishmash of different clips but seems to focus on a few Aboriginal cultural issues. It appears that there is a focus on the stolen generation perhaps and early Australian schools basically being mind control labs. It seems to suggest loss of culture and abuse of Aboriginal children and adults with a system that was introduced by white Europeans, mainly the English, and there's the Freemasons and the Christian Catholic Church. The two maps of Australia, one at the start and one at the end, are in obvious conflict, with one being a European map and one being a map of over 300 traditional regions. Okay, video 2. Jane's Barlow Wonder. Both Rumble and YouTube accounts included this video, posted on Rumble on November 7. On Jane's YouTube channel, this is just called Barlow Wonder, so we can perhaps safely assume it was Jane's video. Now let's start with the title, Wonder. As discovered by Reverend Charles C. Greenway back in a long time ago, in talking with Aboriginal people of the Kamilaroi tribe, means white man or spirit, or maybe even demon. In quotation marks, the Aborigines thought white men to be spirits. Barlow means dead, so the title translates to dead white men, or possibly dead spirits or dead demons. This video includes a montage of clips of mRNA vials and injections, iconic figures and organisations from the last 2 years, including the World Health Organization, Fauci, Tedros, and others who were big players in attempting to have the world take a mRNA shot. There are clips showing how mRNA works scientifically. It looks professionally made, and as if Stacey and Gareth have ripped the video from a documentary and re-uploaded this with their own song choice, or Stacey's song choice. The telling song has a hook line of "The whole world is sitting on a ticking bomb and it's about to explode." From looking at this video, one could conclude that they were anti-mRNA. There's no footage of protests or anything from Melbourne. If this was the only video, then it could be assumed that this was their reasoning. There's not much text to work with other than the title and the lyrics in the song choice. Dead white men, and the whole world is sitting on a ticking bomb and it's about to explode. The third video was posted on November 12, titled Warringal, which translates to strong, standing against attack. This is a very, very short video. Aboriginal rhythm sticks and a didgeridoo have been chosen as background music. There is a single photo of Gareth, one of the soon-to-be killers, with his disguised voiceover, which says, "Sometimes they have to kill us," repeated, "because they can't break our spirit." The third line is a bit tricky to hear, but sounds something like, "Sometimes the Father does not allow them to kill us." It's unclear of who they is, but one could assume Gareth thinks they are perhaps the Illuminati, Freemasons, or deep state government. Whoever they are apparently out there to kill people if people's spirits can't be broken. Perhaps the Father is an intervening spirit father. All very vague, and one can draw various conclusions on who they are and who the Father is. Video 4 is entitled The Savage Speaks, uploaded on November 13. We have a monologue over a still image with some dictionary definitions included. The still image is of a belt buckle. On the belt buckle is a Native American Indian with a specific type of headdress. There are dictionary definitions for barbarian and native. For barbarian, the definition includes savage, rude, uncivilized. For native, the definition includes nations where Europeans hold political power, for example, American Indians. We then see an article snippet of 2 Aboriginal men charged with stealing a horse. Gareth has circled native in regards to the horse stealing incident. Over the above is a monologue with interludes and snippets later of an ASIO spokesperson. The monologue, "From barbarian to extremist, a label so important to our enemies. You all know the labels, and with the labels comes their narratives. I'm going to tell you a story about some distant relatives of mine by reading their words, the enemy's words. The year is 1871. I'm reading from the Colony of New South Wales Police Gazette. I always found this story amusing and kind of laughs." Gareth continues with the article snippet of the wanted men. "My opinion is there isn't much in it. It's a story of a typical horse stealing of the day. and probably unbeknownst to Gareth, some Aboriginal men worked for police departments as trackers and tracked down both Aboriginal men and white men who had stolen things or committed crimes and murders. But Gareth seems to be reading it as an attack on Aboriginal people. With the inclusion of dictionary definitions, it seems that racism is the card being played here. The video then changes to snippets of an ASIO spokesperson. ASIO stands for Australian Security Intelligence Organisation. The spokesperson is talking about a differentiation of religious extremism and ideological extremism. A snippet of the same ASIO spokesperson adds, "Some Australians believe the government's approach to vaccines and lockdowns infringe their freedom. ASIO's focus is on a small number of angry and alienated Australians." We then go back to Gareth's monologue. "Our enemy continued to choose, in my opinion, the wrong labels. I am a barbarian, I am a native, I am a savage, and I am an extremist." The end screen includes a graphic of a monkey with a text overlay of "Report yourself, Mike the Monkey," and includes a phone number. Presumably, someone named Mike at ASIO. His enemies now seem to include anyone from ASIO. He seems to be taking pride in calling himself a barbarian, a native, which is fair, a savage, and an extremist. The last self-label is concerning, and that's it. Make of it what you will. Video 5 is titled "The Structure and Function of the Serpent" and was posted on November 17. The images included are a map of Australia, an old map, Freemason symbols, snake symbols, the IHS symbol, which is a Greek contraction of the word Jesus, various images of A. Radcliffe Brown, and pages and snippets from his book called Structure and Function in Primitive Society, and then lastly an image of the cover of the Rainbow Serpent children's book. The monologue is as follows. "I came across a video titled, 'What Happened to the Tribes of Europe?' Well, I think we all know what happened to the tribes of Europe. With the wars, how they submitted their compliance to prima nocta. But I can't understand the word there, something most of all. They betrayed themselves by allowing their cultural understandings to be destroyed. But this video is not about the tribes of Europe. It's about how Freemasonry and the serpent became the totem of the people here in Australia. And the granddaddy, if you wish, Alfred Radcliffe Brown. And I would suggest that Percy Pezzese played a large role in that. We know the Freemasonry understanding of the serpent. To them it represents wisdom and or knowledge, gnosis, which is the centre of all their worship. And it also represents brotherhood. So how did the rainbow serpent of the Mergan Yulungu peoples of northeastern Arnhem Land become the dominant deity worshipped as the creator spirit? We need to understand the role of the anthropologist in rewriting culture, and that the assistance of the gatherer of sacred artifact and the collaboration of the education system. And I've always found it dubious how the serpent of Freemasonry was adopted. As I explained in my True Fella video, the program has been going on for generations. But to destroy a culture or a cultural understanding of a people doesn't always require, for a better analogy, the smashing of a plate and gluing it back together to form a mug and then telling the owner of the plate it's always been a mug. It's the concept of order out of chaos. The Reformation and deception has worked well. We all know the role of religion in the reformation of the cultural understandings, but what's the role of social sciences and the anthropologist? I had to explain this by using their own words. Then quotes from the book, The Sociological Theory of Totemism, page 127, that of a science of culture is to reduce the complex data with which it deals to a limited number of general laws or principles. Radcliffe Brown. That's a quote from Radcliffe Brown, who I said was the granddaddy because he coined the term rainbow serpent. It doesn't exist other than in English. You see, the weather god of the northern people was just that. It was a weather god, it wasn't their creator, and their understanding of it was corrupted by the occultists. And as I explained in my other video, this leads back to the first religion of some worship, and the first secret society of the Brotherhood of the Serpent. If you don't know who Radcliffe Brown is, look him up. If you don't know who Percy Persees is, look him up. And understand that the indoctrination and synthesis was their goal. Okay. Firstly, I would perhaps add that Gareth probably doesn't know much about European history or of the history of his Scottish ancestors at all. There's strong language about Freemasons and how they subverted Yolngu culture to encourage the use of a snake or serpent. So I would probably also add that he doesn't know very much about various and very differing Aboriginal tribes across Australia. A serpent or snake means different things to different tribes in Europe. The Rainbow Serpent is a classic children's book that I suspect most Australians came across as children. Is it possible that Gareth has just assumed and misinterpreted the rainbow snake, rainbow serpent Dreamtime stories? Radcliffe did indeed coin the term rainbow serpent after speaking with many tribes across Australia. Some of its various names, and I'm going to butcher these terribly, are Kanmari, Tulun, Andrenyinyi, Takan, Tagan, Kuria, Wawi, Naiti, Ueta, Mindi, Banyap, Akaru, Wogal, Wanamangura, Kajura, and Numunrenji. Not all of these are exactly snakes, but hold similar myths of creation and dealings with water. Indeed, Aboriginal peoples today have adopted the term rainbow serpent, but along with the traditional name. The rainbow serpent is generally seen as a creator and has different names in different Aboriginal languages. It's been seen in traditional paintings on cave walls that go back much further than anyone who came in the last 200 years. It's both a good serpent as it creates things, but can also destroy things if it's disturbed. In its various forms, it has a common link with rain and water, and not always with rainbows, but with rainbows because they arch through the sky like a big snake moving around the place. I guess the conclusion might be that Gareth really doesn't study history, and instead holds various and wrong understandings about certain things, and sounds like his actions, past and present, would be influenced by such beliefs. Video 6 is entitled Bunyip and was posted the next day on November 18. The camera is pointed at a small campfire with text overlay of "We don't tolerate your kind out bush." The monologue is as follows. "I was sitting here cooking up some dinner and I farted, and I thought of the troll named Seahorse 777 and the continued prejudiced comments made on my videos. Although I would believe the name Bunyip would be more appropriate, as I believe its origin. Probably it's Southern Australia, so yeah, Bunyip, rather than the hippocamp, or as my Scottish ancestors called his kind, Kelpie." The music in the background is They Have No Heads. It's an Irish rebel song by Dennis Leary. Like most videos, it's vague and unpolished. It's not clear why he's playing an Irish rebel song when he's talking about his Scottish ancestors, but again, he hasn't shown strong knowledge of history. It's also not clear of why he's talking about a bunyip or has entitled the video Bunyip. A bunyip is an Aboriginal mythological creature linked with water, and the word has been traced to the Wagaya language of the Wemba Wemba folks in Victoria. A simple translation is devil or evil spirit, like we saw in a previous video title. It's a pretty dangerous creature that was perhaps told to children in order to frighten them and keep them away from dangerous waterholes and rivers. For Scottish dreaming mythology, a kelpie is a shape-shifting water creature thing that looks a bit like a horse, that basically kills people who ride on it by drowning them. It sounds like he's just trying to troll the troll. Video 7 is a weird one and hard to follow. It's called Play It Again Sam Director's Cut and uploaded on November 27. It's got bits of ASIO spokesperson talking about terrorism, cuts to images of Bryant in Tasmania. There's snippets of police brutalising people in Melbourne, 2 snippets. Sounds like Gareth's having a go at the Jesuits. There's Freemasonry symbology, CIA symbology, planes flying with skull and bones and numbers symbology. There's some stuff about Port Arthur and how the Black Hawk helicopter tragedies of 1996 were to silence the shooters of Port Arthur because apparently the SAS were part of that. It's a photo of American Indians, quotes such as "Turn in your arms, the government will protect you." Port Arthur again, Mike, the ASIO spokesperson, saying, "My people are so good, you never notice them." Then Gareth saying, "I see them everywhere." People who died in the Black Hawk helicopter crashes, and they were killed apparently because they were the shooters in Port Arthur. And then overlay saying, "Dead men don't talk," Captain Stevens. Image of Bossy for some reason. "Here's another one of your people, Brothers in Arms, SAS. Hey, Bossy, Spec Ops HQ." Something about Mossad, Israeli services and a gun, outsourcing ASIO jobs. An Asian man over a Chinese dragon symbol. Apparently his children are slithering out of the woodpile. There's images of military men. Hoddle Street, 1987 Hoddle Street was a lone actor. Apparently was programmed by the ASIO. Martin Bryant's face swapped with a military man's face back and forth as if it's the same person. The background music is sinister. There's a random video of an EMF weapon that was being used by some military people up in Canberra. Then to a picture of a group of different bikies, to various police badges. And then he says, "The largest and most feared gang of criminals in Australia, which have killed more people than smallpox, have imprisoned and tortured more people than the Medillion cartel." With a text overlay, "Your enemy lives among you." Monologue, "And they've extorted more money than the Las Niñas, yet you still don't accept you are slaves to their system." Then more pictures of military and police, and then finishes with some Freemason symbology. It's a weird one. Video 8 is called Australia's Last Outlaw, posted on December 8th. The video starts with a map of Australia, but with the Indigenous Australian people's map. There is an overlay image which includes Aboriginal Council bylaws. Nothing sinister about these bylaws at all. The music chosen is a popular song by an Aboriginal artist, and I think it's called "I'm From the Bush." It then shows an old picture of an Aboriginal man known as Jimmy Governor. Then a £2,000 reward poster article with a different picture of Jimmy, and also a man named Joe Governor. Both have been charged for willful murder of the Mabey family and others at Breelong near Gilgandra, Sydney, the 25th of September 1900. We then move to an article snippet saying Jimmy Governor was hanged in Darlinghurst Jail at 9 a.m. on 18th of January 1901. He spent his last night with ministers and his last moments were spent smoking a cigarette. His last words were incoherent to the observers, possibly spoken in his nation's language, and are thus unrecorded. Thus ended the life of Australia's last outlaw. Gareth's monologue is as follows. "I'd like to tell you a story about my kinfolk, Jimmy. Jimmy teaching young kids how to hunt possums by moonlight and how to track lizards over rock. But y'all wouldn't be interested in that because his history is written by the assholes in our society and you will only listen to those stories. So what would Jimmy's last words have been in his language? Waringo, Waringo. Then there's a different photo of Jimmy and the video ends with a drawing of the captives of Jimmy Governor. All the men in this photo are white and in suits. But perhaps Jimmy was actually tracked down by other Aboriginal men. Perhaps for Gareth, Jimmy was looked at in a similar vein of how others view Ned Kelly. Video 9 is the last upload on Gareth's Rumble channel and is titled Cowardice and was uploaded on December 9. The video starts with an image that says Bad Boys, Cops, with the music from the song Bad Boys. The video is a repost of an incident that took place in New Zealand where New Zealand police came and took a baby from their parents. The baby was taken for an operation it needed. The parents didn't want the baby to receive donor blood that may have been possibly contaminated via mRNA vaccines and contained spike proteins. The monologue is as follows. For over 200 years here in Australia and New Zealand, you have allowed your masters and their agents to do as they will to the children. There's no point in telling criminals that their behaviour is criminal. There is no point to making placards and protesting. Either defend your children until your last breath or answer for your cowardice. Gareth is raising his voice to the point of shouting with this last sentence. Gareth then shows more of the video from New Zealand. In this video, one could assume that this is about the mRNA, but the monologue paints a different picture. One of colonisation and a theme of standing up for children and not being a coward when police, authorities, government, organisations come to your door, a recurring theme from the previous videos. Overall, Gareth seems to think he has to make a stand to those who took his culture away, and perhaps every department of government body in Australia was and still is part of that problem, along with demons and satanic cults. So moving on to Jane's YouTube channel. Jane has posted several of Gareth's videos on her channel. These include True Fella, Warringal, Cowardice, and Daniel's message to the bad boys, which was the one that's very hard to follow. Video 1 on Jane's channel is called Barlow's Wonder and was posted on November 7, the same day Gareth uploaded it to his Rumble channel. Video 2 is called The Banquet of the Beast and was uploaded on November 13. The voice is that of Stacey. The monologue sounds like an existing rhyming poem written for children, but Stacey has replaced some words. For example, after some little cute rhyming lines, it then says, "The main course is your choice of roast, false religion, or idolatrous ideology, accompanied by lashings of lies." And it goes on. This sounds like a typical classroom activity where children are given an existing poem and need to make changes based on the topic or activity at hand. If this was indeed an example used to demonstrate the activity to students, it sure would evoke reactions and complaints from parents. Video 3 is called Help Wanted and was posted on November 18. The video is a still image of an old-fashioned phone accompanied by a monologue that has an old-time phone sound effect added. The monologue is of a pretend job description, and it goes, "Help Wanted, servants of the living God. Duties include love and obey our Heavenly Father with all your heart, mind and soul. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Stewardship and care for creation. Keep yourself from being corrupted by the beast system. Defend the cause of the needy and oppressed. Resist evil and do what is right, no matter what the consequences. Remuneration? None. In fact, this job may cost you everything you have. You will be hated and persecuted just as Jesus was. On-the-job training provided by the Holy Spirit. To register your interest, humble yourself before the Creator and seek the Spirit of truth. Preferably in the wilderness, lovers of lies and delusion need not apply. Applications close soon. Do not miss out on this once-in-forever opportunity." I can't quite think of the word, but it smacks of no creativity and pure ideology of a fundamental kind. Is it a literal call out for people to join her and where she's going? Was she starting a religious sect of some kind? Only one short month later, this bizarre monologue, which seems to be fundamentally Christian in nature, she would be shooting at police and then taking part in the murder of innocent young police officers for something as basic as an outstanding warrant. Not only did this cost her everything she had, it also cost others everything they had and their families and friends, bringing on absolute torture for them for many, many years to come. One of the police officers that was shot at and wounded is just about to have a baby. How does someone go from believing in Jesus in perhaps a very individualistic nature to then trying to kill young, soon-to-be fathers and potential mothers? Video 4 is called The Blind Lead the Blind and was uploaded on November 25th. We hear American Indian music over a still image of an American Indian nicknamed Geronimo. A paragraph of still text as overlay reads, Men have become consumers of information as entertainment. When Geronimo's family members were raped, murdered, and mutilated, he sought out the spirit in the forest, in the Girnar, the bush camp or wilderness. It was then the spirit set him on his path. The vast majority of mankind have no spirit or connection to the spirit. The event they are waiting for has been occurring for over 2,000 years. Those who refuse to even seek the spirit choose a coward's death. As the focus of this video is on Geronimo, let's find out who he was. Geronimo was a man from the Beroncohe band of the Nehindahe Apache people. His name was Mescalero Chiricahua Goyal Koja. I'm not sure how to say it at all. It means the one who yawns. Geronimo's band or group, along with other groups, carried out raids and fought against Mexican and American military campaigns in the northern Mexico states, New Mexico and Arizona. Now this is not my forte at all. America was at war with Mexico, and in the process and after the war ended in 1848, Americans invaded Apache lands. Geronimo and his kinfolk were forced onto reservations and led breakouts to return his people to their nomadic lifestyle. He seems to have eventually surrendered 3 times to accept life on the Apache reservations, kind of. A certain number of Apache were exiled to Florida, and due to Geronimo's fame, he was provided by authorities as a main attraction at fairs and in parades. So there seems to be a connection with white people destroying the culture of indigenous peoples across the globe. Perhaps in Stacey Jane's interpretation is that Geronimo was a man connected deeply with the spirit and was a warrior who was not a coward and stood up for his people. This of course connects with Gareth's themes in his videos. It sounds like the speaker is referring to the event as the second coming of Jesus, but not sure. Only because 2,000 years is mentioned. Video 5 is called Prepare for the Adventure and was posted on December 8th. There's not much to go on here. The video is a still image of an axe, a knife, and what appears to be a sharpening stone. The entire video is the popular song called Stand By Me. The gist of that song is that if 2 people stand together, they won't be afraid when everything falls apart. At the very end, there is a photo of the killers, Gareth and Stacey. Gareth is where the axe was and Stacey is where the knife was. Nothing else happens in the video. Because of the insane events that would take place only days later, it has the aura of a mood preparation video. Video 6, Daniel's message to the bad boys, December 9th. Stacey has posted Gareth Daniel's video on her channel. This video was not uploaded to Gareth's channel on Rumble. The Bad Boy song is used again. Stacey Jane has shared one of Gareth Daniel's videos. The monologue seems to be in Gareth's disguised voice. This is a message for the following people. Gareth then names some police people and then says, pay attention. Let's get straight to the question that all you boys want answered. I don't know why you were all born retarded enough to join the police force. Maybe it had something to do with your mother eating Bethlemet's dick, possibly. But you all made a choice, and I'd like to thank Sergeant, redacted the name, for convincing just how F-word retarded you boys are. After working alongside you boys in uniform and with your CPIU F-word wits, and that's the Child Protection Investigation Unit detectives, for my American friends listening, I suggest that you boys who drive all the way out here and stand around at my front gate and having a circle jerk, trying to find your testicles, it's time to put an end to that S-word. Go and talk with Sergeant, redacted the name, the ex-Queensland Police Service retard that went on the run for 2 years and you boys couldn't find him. Ask him what happens when you come up on old Daniel here and threaten to pull your pistols. Anyhow, I've answered the only question you need to know. So I'll leave you with this message from the mouse. Once upon a time there were 3 little bears. It then goes into a weird mouse cartoon calling a cheese shop and getting excited by the staff member talking about cheese to the point of climaxing. This is all too vague, but it sounds like there was history at this man's house, Gareth's house. It sounds like he had been in some kind of incident that made a constable go on the run, or so he says, 2 years ago. As CPIU was involved at some point in the past, it suggests it had something to do with children, possibly Stacey's children. No idea. It does also suggest that he has been very aware of the police turning up at his place in recent months. The police confirmed that officers had been to his property several times in regards to an outstanding warrant for Gareth. Video 7 is titled Cowardice and is posted on December 10th. This is similar to Cowardice that was posted on Gareth's channel about the New Zealand police taking the baby from its mother, but has an extended part over a still image of Nathaniel, Gareth's brother. The disguised voice monologue is as follows. A reading of the missing persons mention. Police are appealing for public assistance to locate a missing man. When he could not be contacted by his friends or family, he was reported missing to officers who immediately commenced inquiries into his whereabouts. Read sarcastically, police and family hold serious concerns for his welfare. He is described as being of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander appearance, and then some physical details are mentioned. Anyone with information about his whereabouts is urged to contact Crime Stoppers. The monologue begins, I see there was no mention of this missing man being a whistleblower on high-level corruption within the New South Wales Education Department and its connections to New South Wales Police Organised Crime Syndicate and its Fixated Persons Branch. Or ASIO Orificer, redacted the name, and the information that was passed to her as she was posing as an ABC reporter. You wish to make this public by using my little brother? The video then finishes with a photo of an axe and knife weapons that appeared in a previous video. He's been carving something throughout the video. Okay, so this does raise the question of whether there's something sinister going on with New South Wales education and police. I can't really see what this might be. If adults were completing the students' tests for them, what connection would this have with the police? Cheating on tests is certainly dodgy and immoral, but it's not high-level corruption by any means. It might also be absolutely nothing at all and just an assumption made by Gareth, and he seems pretty delusional. Let's perhaps not forget that there were complaints made by parents about Nathaniel, Stacey, and also Gareth. The start of the video was about police taking a baby from parents in New Zealand. As Gareth has alluded to many things about education, Freemasons, issues in Indigenous culture and education, stolen generation, various things that have happened to Indigenous people, including also in America, could just be a big false flag, and this is all based in absolutely nothing, and he's just making an assumption about police. Video 8 is titled Dear Deanna and was posted on December 12th, the same day of the shootings and killings of police and a neighbour on Gareth's property. Stacey, Jane, reads a written letter. Dear Deanna, I know that you have received a message about them coming for the children, not only in the ways you describe, but also physically. Watch the cowardice video on my page. The Spirit has given me a message for you, Deanna. If you do not leave where you are, they will come for you and your baby. You will be taken. She's almost crying at this point. Where? Where the dead bodies are. You must act in faith and leave. Our Father will show you where to go. I know the pain of losing children. Recently, my husband and I lost both our adult children when they chose the world, rejecting us and the narrow path to take the wide road that their partners and friends are on. This is a pain that will only be healed in heaven. Your child is small enough to hold in your arms. You must not let anyone take her from you. If you, Deanna, as a sister, were here in Australia, or left to this day to travel here, we would offer you a place of refuge on your arrival and share with you everything we have. I know this to be true of our brother and sister in Arizona as well. Deanna, I trust that the Lord will see that this message gets to you and that you are able to receive it in love. Jane, Stacey Jane. Okay, so we have various things going on here. An insight into the pain that Stacey is living in because her own children were taken from her. Not really, they just wanted to get away from their mum and Gareth. There's a connection made to the taking of the baby by police in New Zealand, but there's no connection in reality there. Sounds like Stacey is receiving messages from God to the point of telling other parents to avoid having their children taken. There's various mentions of spirit, God, heaven and such, on theme with the other videos. Video 9 is called Prepare for the Battle and Be Strangers on the Earth, and is also posted on December 12. Jane reads 2 Esdras, a section from a Bible book that is now no longer found in the Bible. In short, God allows for the total destruction of humanity by unleashing demons and such, and mad men plundering and destroying things to basically start over again with the few who are left alive. The reading has a single image backdrop of what looks like an apocalypse. A few examples from this reading include the beginnings of sorrow where there shall be much lamentation, and take their children captive, for in captivity and famine they will beget their children. The more they adorn their cities, their houses and possessions, and their persons, the more angry I will be with them for their sins, says the Lord. Righteousness will reign over us. The story is read very passionately, like a fundamental American pastor reading something to the congregation. Video 10 is titled Don't Be Afraid, posted on December 12, hours after they killed police. Stacey Jane and Gareth Daniel are filming themselves. Seems to be at night. They don't look disturbed or regretful and speak slowly and purposefully. A helicopter can be heard flying overhead. Gareth says, "They came to kill us and we killed them. If you don't defend yourself against these devils and demons, you're a coward." Stacey says, "We'll see you when we get home." Gareth, "We'll see you at home, Don." Stacey, "Love you." Again, we see the affirmation of devils and demons, which has been a thread throughout their videos. We have the confession that they did indeed kill the police, and an accusation that the police came to kill them. We see the obvious paranoid delusion they've been living in come to reality. In their minds, 4 young and inexperienced officers were coming to kill them. 4 young officers who they didn't know. 4 young people just starting out in their careers and lives, with one just about to have his first child. Why are they talking about home? Didn't they just shoot them at their own home? Does home mean heaven? And who is Don? Okay, so that's all the videos. Now, moving on, a little bit about police and then media. Police and conspiracy. Yes, there are lots of things that happened, especially in Melbourne, over the last 2 years that need to be investigated. From police brutality, wrongful arrests, and many other things, but only the people this happened to can bring it to the courts, and it's a difficult process that perhaps most don't want to go through or have the resources to do so. Due to police actions in Melbourne, many came to despise the Victorian police. Police aren't even aware of certain incidents that took place. For example, when the old lady was very forcibly pushed over and 2 officers pepper sprayed her in the face after she had fallen, police either created or believed the false narrative that it was a man with a wig and proceeded to tell all officers through comms that it was a man. Even when mainstream media showed snippets of unarmed people being shot in the back with slightly lethal weapons at the shrine, they labelled them as Nazis and right-wing extremists. But then we have people who just despise all police all of the time, no matter which state or territory, and likely felt this way before all the police brutality in Melbourne. And whatever the police do is always part of something sinister and conspiratorial. The reality for rural police is that they are under-resourced. Rookie cops would be doing random checks of different things all the time and couldn't rightly expect to be ambushed for any one of those random outstanding warrant checks or missing persons report. However, let's not forget that incompetence is usually always playing a role. Yes, it was wrong to send 4 inexperienced police for an outstanding warrant in an area that has a communications black spot. Whoever gave the orders may end up terminated or living in a life of guilt. There is the clear issue of providing a white lie to the media and public that police had gone to the property for the missing persons report, when indeed it was for the outstanding warrant. Why was this done? To protect the image of Queensland Police, to cover for wrongful deployment, to protect someone in charge. That does need to be investigated. ABC interviewed the police union spokesperson in Queensland, who labelled them as anti-vaxxers and pro-gun conspiracy theorists. Various media reported that the brothers had been using ice. Their reports came from locals in the area. This is a dangerous drug. Merge this with off-the-cliff conspiracy, severe paranoia about demons, delusions, anger issues, isolation from the outside world, perhaps a hatred for anything Australian, and with guns, and it's a dangerous cocktail. Other media, Channel 10, bring up issues about bizarre COVID-19 conspiracies. Yes, there have been some pretty bizarre. However, as the old saying goes, give it a few weeks. Many of the conspiracies became true and are still coming true, and the most recent one is Elon Musk on Twitter saying all the conspiracy theories about Twitter are basically true. I would perhaps add that none of the trains seem to bring up any of the conspiracy theories that actually came true. ABC reported that Gareth had been posting on conspiracy websites in support of anti-government and anti-vaccination stances. Okay, so have hundreds of thousands of other Australians. And ABC presenters just very loosely tie them in with people in conspiracy theories online and don't make specifications. It's pretty loose research, and they've certainly been wrong on multiple occasions over the years, as various conspiracy theories have indeed come true. Might it be fair to expect more from the ABC? They use up $3 million per day. By the time you've finished your morning conspiracy theory research, they've already spent $1 million. Some media also bring up the topic of tighter gun control. There are people out there who want Australians totally disarmed. As everyone knows, the Howard government disarmed many Australians after the Port Arthur massacre. However, there were more murders the following year via other weapons. Americans make good points for not being disarmed. With the clear evidence of the 2 killers posting an eerily calm confession video, Daily Mail also reported that a local horse rescuer had coincidentally run into one of the brothers who spoke to him about 3 horses that may need looking after, and if there was room on his property. Understandably, the horse rescuer presumed this request was due to financial struggle and not because there was about to be a massive shootout. A local who used to rent the house says that the house had since been fortified with steel in the walls. No evidence of this, however, but it could be true. For the Queensland shootings overall, the media coverage was average and kind of okay. Okay, so the main issue with media coverage, we've seen time and time again over the years how mainstream media folks made false allegations about protesters, why they were protesting, and then lie about some very obvious things such as numbers attending protests. I've made some videos about the undeniable fake news claims. Like many things, people will use the incident in Queensland to push an agenda. Some media have focused in on narrow points and inflated them, pointing the finger at conspiracy people in general, people who question the government, and people who question the mRNA experiment. Then at people who want to live off-grid, people who own guns. Everything else, it seems, was ignored. If there's one thing that has often caused so much damage over and over again across millennia, it's the false labelling of everyone in a group as something. The issue that arises is the instant damning of anyone or any groups who are associated in very vague ways and often, in this case, not associated in any way. The most biased and most inaccurate coverage was on Channel 10 from a show called The Project. The project started many years ago and was an attempt to impart news to a younger audience. They were making news cool and have always had about 4 presenters at the desk who are all left-wing in politics, and therefore the show is biased. In the project's coverage of the Queensland shootings, they choose to title their video "Far-Right Threat: Dark Conspiracy Theories Fueling Extremism." Ali starts the segment with, "It's clear like-minded online communities played a role," and goes on to say, "One of the brothers was believed to have been a member of a prominent Telegram conspiracy group. Since the shootings, some members have expressed admiration for the murderous trio, one even urging others to follow their example." Then they bring on a doctorate expert who is likely to be far left and looks like a typical socialist. She talks about how the shootings will spur others to follow suit and that beliefs of conspiracy theorists will be reinforced by online groups and such. As she is talking, the project shows a protest sign that has the People's Revolution flag, a Mandate Freedom flag, and a sign that reads, "We are a country in distress. How did democracy turn into dictatorship? By our compliance? Say no or it never ends. Blackmail and threats is not freedom. Let's stand together. Say no to discrimination or forced jabs or no job, segregation. Australia is better than this." So to pause here, I've met the young people from the People's Revolution while I was filming up in Brisbane. They are passionate and very friendly and make legitimate and factual statements about consequences, suffering, loss of liberty and government overreach. I don't agree with the politics of the group, as they always start rallies and speeches with acknowledgement of country and might throw in a line about 200 years of suffering and such. But they are very friendly and courteous and purpose-driven. And some of them have prior personal experience with adverse events, and yes, this is something that has always existed for any vaccine, prior to the more recent mRNA type ones. Undisputable. What's the problem with bringing awareness to this? Well, one is it gets in the way of what is now one of the most lucrative industries in the world. But they are only protesters and believe in protesting, unlike the alleged killers. The other protest signs are very tame. Mandate freedom, are very typical of a joint argument that hundreds of thousands of Victorians held when protesting in the streets of Melbourne, and other hundreds of thousands of Australians at protests in their respective states. So the issue now is that the project have made a decision to lump in all of these people in with these 3 nutjobs who killed police. If anything, the views of Gareth Train about Indigenous suffering are a common view held by panellists and guests who appear on the project. Although obviously there is an off-the-cliff conspiracy and delusion with Gareth, and the staff of the project aren't about to go and kill anyone. Ali goes on to say that online spaces are typical of the emerging threat. The guest doctorate goes on to say, "The far right is a really broad church. It can encompass anything from neo-Nazi beliefs, right-wing nationalism, to QAnon-type conspiracy beliefs." The video overlay then shows typical protesters being intimidated by heavily armed police, and then connects this to the 2020 January 6th protests riot in America. There are now just broad and unlinked arguments and don't seem to have any connections with the shootings in Queensland. They've just made assumptions, made vague links, and have used the death of young police officers to slander their opposing side of politics. Here's someone I found at one of the Melbourne protests who she probably thinks was a Nazi. Much like the accusations that came from other mainstream news who labelled protesters as Nazis. Ali goes on to say that the pandemic created an ideal environment for online radicalisation. The project then uses clips from an ASIO spokesperson to confirm their views, and quotes more time in those online environments without some of the circuit breakers of everyday life like family, community, engagement, work and school created more extremists. Now, parts of this point, keeping everyone locked up in their houses, was a very, very bad idea. The worst thing for anyone suffering from a mental health illness is to keep them locked up inside all day long for months on end, away from family and friends, away from gyms and exercise, away from public social gatherings, away from school, and you end up with a mental health pandemic to the point where people go so insane that they light themselves on fire in cars. Extremism of a different kind. The segment goes on to talk about right-wing extremism and Nazis and nationalism and how the Labor government is intending to update counter-terror laws. At this point, there is zero connection to the trio involved in the police killings. As I've shown above, the trio did not express any views of nationalism, quite the opposite in fact. They didn't believe in placards or protests and never mentioned anything about Nazis or showed any connection to far-right groups. The presenter says, last week the Labor government flagged its intention to update counter-terror laws in light of the changing threat. And then there's overlays and snippets of police attacking protesters. Then they whack on Claire O'Neill, the Home Affairs Minister, who says a very large group of people who are of interest, who subscribe to various forms of right-wing kind of nationalism, Nazism, those sorts of things, and it's obviously enormously concerning. After snippets of this and that, they bring on another guest, Dr. Mark Brisky, an ex-police officer who is an expert in hate crimes, who is deeply concerned about the rise in far-right extremism. They argue that there are more out there like the trains, and that if you take away the violence of what they did, Ali argues, there are others out there who are anti-vax and don't trust the government. And how do you tell the difference between people who would use violence to act on these beliefs and those who wouldn't? The expert makes a fair point about paranoid delusions. Then the segment diverts into lone wolf terror attacks and radicalisation. Ali then makes a comparison between Islamic extremists and lone wolf attacks, and the segment pretty much finishes. But the labelling has been cast, and their listeners now connect the trains and the killings with people who hold views that there was government overreach, that the mandates were bad, and that anyone against the biggest clinical trial this country has ever seen, and throw in the words Nazi, extremist and nationalism several times, and make their viewers more concerned about these people, but zero connection to the trains and what they were actually about. Although wrong, it might have made more sense to connect the burning of old Parliament around Australia Day in 2021 and Gareth Train, both two acts of extremism. Although at the time, the act of attempting to burn down old Parliament building was linked in with the freedom protests that happened weeks after. Media make links to propagate their agenda. A current affair who presumably spent more time researching the trains says, a clue as to where it all went wrong could be in the comments made by his brother and partner in crime, Gareth Train. Gareth regularly posted conspiracy theories online showing he had no respect for police and didn't trust the government. Dangerous thoughts that appeared to have rubbed off on his brother Nathaniel. A Current Affairs shared one of the email communications from Gareth Train to Nathaniel on May 4th, 2021 at 6:56 a.m. Yes, Australia has been at the front of the Luciferian agenda for some time, as Vince indicates. Government, health authorities, universities, religious organisations were all infiltrated from inception. It's a bought and paid for country. Oz Gates of Hell Corp. Gates, the Anastasi, Queensland government, family business and the University of Queensland are all in bed together. vax, genetics, biowarfare, toxins and venoms, AI and drone tech, you name it. This email from Gareth also has a link to a Queensland government website with a statement 90979. The first part of this email is off the cliff conspiracy. The last part of this email is indeed true. The link in the email goes to a statement provided on the Queensland government website which was posted on October 20. The statement is about Queensland partnering with a med tech company to create jobs. It's about a deal with Vaxis, which developed out of the University of Queensland, in developing MAP needle-free vaccine technology at a facility in North Shore, Hamilton, to produce far more vaccines at 300 million doses per year. The type of vaccine meets the standards of licensing according to the Therapeutic Goods Administration and the FDA. It only creates 139 jobs over 10 years and is part of the plan to rebuild Queensland economy. The statement said Vaxis has the backing of the World Health Organization, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the pharmaceutical multinational company Merck. The facility to be developed in Queensland will be a building owned by Economic Development Queensland, so manufacturing can commence in early 2022. The project also closely aligns with the Queensland Biomedical 10-year roadmap and action plan. I had a look at one video on an independent media channel called None Your Business with 42,000 followers on YouTube. The video was basically the same as most mainstream videos about the incident and then asked for comments. Some comments are fair, but boy oh boy, perhaps most are absolutely vile. Pure hatred for police. Lots of people jumping from assumptions to factual conclusion. Some very disgusting comments. Generally, most media make a link with anti-vaxxers and these killers. From spending way too much time now looking at Stacey, Gareth and less so at Nathaniel, their stance on the mRNA seemed to be only vaguely and weakly linked to their longer held and much stronger views on wider society as a whole. The weak link is perhaps because of the first video posted on the YouTube channel, and also it seems that Stacey had left her job for not wanting to take part in one of the biggest clinical trials this country has ever seen, as Greg Hunt put it. We also know that a lot of nurses, doctors and various health practitioners and professors also didn't want to take part. One of the most recent doctors bringing awareness to some of the hidden consequences is in fact Dr. Catherine Phelps, who was initially a spokesperson for the Great Experiment. There have been various and perhaps many others before Dr. Phelps, but they have often been cancelled, as I've discovered for myself, although now they are allowed to have their voices heard on Twitter. One could also make an argument that the federal Lib and Labor government are more guilty than the trains. Well, let's just say there are various people who are no longer with us for certain reasons that I won't talk about. So why do these people get a free pass? We pulled Kinder eggs off the shelves because some kids were getting sick. We pulled spinach off the shelves because people were getting sick. Same with baby formula and anything else. Even 40 years ago, thalidomide was given to pregnant women, which resulted in deformed babies. So what perhaps is the intention of reporting on this incident by lumping in all of these other groups? Why were the People's Revolution lumped in with these mad killers? Would it be accurate to say that we know that the protests in Melbourne, after it became easy to protest, was a mix of people from all political persuasions and cultural backgrounds? So why the focus on right-wing extremism, nationalism and Nazism? If you're not aware, around the turn of the century, the Communist Handbook had a strategy in there to label people as Nazis, to shut down discourse, to shut down debate, to shut down discussion and everything. 2 decades later, we now see this term bandied around the mainstream news, the mainstream media, and police, and even the Premier of Victoria, Daniel Andrews, and just calling everyone Nazis to immediately shut down discourse, and shut down debate. The political diversity that we saw in the rallies is also reflected within the government. The government is such a mix all the time, and most of the government doesn't like the government, and we pay them a lot of money to fight against the government. And they are questioning government agencies all the time. Are they also conspiracy theorists? Are they linked in with the killers? No. We know there are senators who are pro-vaccine and anti-mandatory vaccine, and a tiny number who have been brave enough to discuss adverse events. One who does this consistently is Gerard Rennick. When he was talking about the undeniable and factually evident adverse events, he was laughed at by Green senators. How could anyone laugh at adverse events in children? And what drives this ability to laugh at suffering children, teenagers and young adults? Green senators tend to believe that they stand up for all Aboriginal people, although they don't. However, in this case, they seem to share some similar rhetoric to Gareth in their reflections on Australia's history. They don't respect parliamentary processes and mocked the Queen, and believe false statistics about deaths in custody, which Jacinta Numberjimpa Price has exposed not to be fully true. If you look into all the Aboriginal deaths in custody, which includes various categories such as police chases and in this case under arrest or attempted arrest or a standoff, this actually falls into one of those categories. How did Green senators react to the killing of the 2 Indigenous men by police? What did Sarah Hanson-Young say about these police murders? Well, nothing it seems. But she was at a climate change conference in Montreal, and I guess senators aren't expected to chime in on the rare times that police are killed. Adam Bandt was too involved in calling people who didn't like drag queens reading stories to children Nazis, and putting us all into poverty with insane stances on how humans are destroying the planet. Just before and after the shootings, Lydia Thorpe was tweeting about climate action, land rights, treaty, racism issues, sovereignty, child removal being the act of genocide, with the tweet showing the damning report on deaths of Queensland children in care, presumably Aboriginal children in care. One tweet is headlined, "Another Day in the Colony." It's about injustices on Aboriginal children by police. Samantha Ratnam is posting about Black Lives Matter, climate change propaganda, scrapping the government and reforming the voting system because One Nation is now sitting in Victoria's Parliament, and they are far right, religious right and racist, and that these people will damage First Nations communities. She gives her blessings to Fiona Patten, who helped lock up everyone in Melbourne for months on end and it resulted in tragic consequences. Do these killings make all Aboriginal people violent killers? No, of course not. But ask any man on the street about the identity of the people killed up in Queensland and they won't know of their Aboriginal heritage. This kind of angry thinking by Gareth is not new to me. I toured an Aboriginal Celtic woman around Australia, Jacinta Numberjimpa Price. Leading up to the tour and during the tour, there were threats and racist slurs made consistently towards Jacinta from Aboriginal people. So much so that I had to get very heavy security for the events. The problem that many Aboriginal people had was that an Aboriginal woman was not asking permission to travel across Australia into their land and speak her mind. We even had an incident in Brisbane where a man interrupted the event to very angrily and very, very loudly shout down at Jacinta because she was disrespecting their culture. It was a tirade. He and his group were removed from the venue and then loitered outside. And to leave the venue, we had to get the help of the Brisbane police, who were very, very busy at the time. Just prior to this event, ABC, like the man at the Brisbane event, slandered and defamed Jacinta on air and then sent this interview to further defame Jacinta in her Alice Springs electorate. As a result, and to avoid a defamation case, ABC had to apologise twice via their national program Media Watch. The same presenter on Media Watch years later would then defame Real Rukshan, an independent Sri Lankan live streamer, independent media journalist, who, unlike ABC staff who wouldn't take a delay on their salary increases when none of us could work, took no remuneration for his work. Are independent video makers, media commentators also extremists because we covered the protests and our stances on loss of liberty and government overreach? Are independent video makers, live streamers, media commentators all extremists because of our views on government overreach and because we covered the protests and the lockdowns and the devastating consequences? No. Because Stacey seemed to be some kind of Christian, not really, does this not add in all Christians to the mix? Or fundamental types of any religion? No, of course not. Those Christians take the 10 Commandments pretty seriously, with one of them being, "Thou shalt not kill." Why are some things highlighted and others ignored? You could sum this up by simply saying it's to sell an agenda to the public. Are all people who didn't want to take part in the experiment labelled as anti-vaxxers on the same path as the trains? No, of course not. Are all politicians who disagree with the mandates and government overreach and coerced mRNA on the same path as the trains? No. Are all people who want to live off grid the same as the trains? No. Are people who want to own guns? No. Or the people who believe always was, always will be Aboriginal land? No. Are all people who don't like the Freemasons potential killers? No. So in conclusion, this was a tragic event for the police who were killed, their families and friends. There are issues around the chain of command for Queensland Police and a very slow follow-up with the outstanding warrant. The trains, especially Gareth, seem to be completely delusional and acted on their delusions. We won't really know much about what happened or why because the killers were killed. There's still a lot to potentially come out over time. Media did an average job, and some media and police and agency spokespersons used and will use the incident to push a narrative. Media did very limited research and then perhaps cherry-picked videos to create a narrative and label entire groups. Elements about the brothers, especially Gareth, were left untouched either by lack of research, lack of time, or they just didn't want to go there. So after spending a week investigating what was going on, because there was all the labelling of protesters and freedom fighters as linked in loosely with these killers, I could just as easily link them in with all left-wing groups, left-wing extreme groups, hardcore communists, socialists, and even media, if I was that way inclined. And if I worked for one of these networks, I could spread that message right across Australia to the millions of people who still watch TV and are still in the old legacy media world and be very well paid to do so. However, obviously I'm not. So obviously I'm not doing that. I'm not labelling any of the groups associated in any way as guilty or connected to the trains. If you're left or right or up or down or in one of those quadrants, it's very important that, like in the big protests, we work together and call out the labelling, call out the false narratives when you see them. Because there is still very real suffering going on in Melbourne and in Victoria because of what's happened over the last few years. And then these people, while they're down, while they've lost everything, are now being labelled still as Nazis and extremists, and are now connected to people, insane people, who have killed police up in Queensland. So encourage others in your group to develop morals and develop a backbone and to be honest and call out the false narratives when they arise. So if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. It took a long time to make, and you are more than welcome to show some support in the support options in the video program description. Thank you very much. Peace out. Sam.